Hi, my name is Jacqueline Roberts, and this is my presentation on tort liability. So first, what is tort liability? This is a wrongful act committed against one person by another, in which the party that commits the tort must reimburse the victim for the harm caused. There are two different types of tort liability. The first is an intentional tort, which is something you do that you weren't supposed to do. This can include assault, battery, libel, slander, defamation, false arrest, malicious prosecution, and invasion of privacy. And the second type of tort is negligent tort, so not doing something they were supposed to do. Now we're going to take a look at 5 different court cases, so I'll give you some background information first. The first court case is Frame versus Comeo. Frame is an 8th grade student, and Comeo is the science teacher. During a spelling test, 2 disruptive students were asked to leave, and they did so. However, after those 2 students left, Frame then became disruptive, but did not leave after being asked twice. The teacher then approached Frame's desk. Then, as Frame stood, the teacher at the same time grabbed Frame by the arm to assist him out of the classroom, and as a result of both actions, Frame fell, hit a podium, and eventually halted against the blackboard. Frame sued the teacher for assault and battery. The court found that although the teacher committed a battery, he was justified in doing so. Frame's actions were apparently sufficient to provoke the teacher to forcefully remove Frame from the classroom. Moreover, the court found it was necessary for the teacher to remove Frame not only to maintain order, but also to facilitate the learning process. So, some reactive measures, if this were to have taken place at my current school, Frame would have been seen by the nurse and social worker to ensure physical and mental well-being. Witnesses would have given statements from the classroom, as well as the teacher and student that were involved themselves. Frame's parents would have been called by the principal. Definitely communication is key between the teacher, the principal, the student, and the parents. Some proactive measures. The teacher could then in future call someone from the student support team to assist in removing a defiant student from the classroom. I know that I have had a situation in which the student didn't want to leave the classroom. The other circumstances were different, but you have to have support in a case or a scenario like that. So having someone there to help in those matters, knowing that you do need to most likely supervise the rest of your class, that would be one proactive measure. Additionally, some professional ethics. You would reiterate to your staff to refrain from touching students, especially in tense matters. I think it's perhaps a little bit different in elementary school where I'm at, for a teacher to give a student a hug or something like that. But it's definitely a district protocol on that. However, in a matter such as this where tensions are high, I would definitely refrain staff from touching students. The second court case is Flanagan versus Canton. So again, some background information. Flanagan was a 5th grade student at Canton Middle School. During gym class, students were particularly rowdy that day. The teacher stopped class early to lecture them on the importance of listening during an activity. And then students were dismissed to change in the locker rooms as usual. While in the locker room, Flanagan was pushed by another student, and Flanagan fell into a locker and bench. He sustained severe injuries, including the removal of his spleen. And it's important to note that normally the teacher would accompany students into the locker room, but today he had remained behind to speak to another student for a few minutes. Flanagan's mother sued the school district for negligent supervision, and the court ultimately sided with Flanagan and his parents, um, and his mother, and reasoned that because the students were misbehaving the day of the incident, the teacher owed a greater duty to supervise the students, especially because their conduct was foreseeable. So some reactive measures, first and foremost, seek medical help for the student. Again, obtain statements from witnesses and students involved, and staff as well. And then again, communicate with teachers and parents. Some proactive measures possibly require supervision in locker rooms. This I think is an interesting debate as well, because male teachers need to be with male students, female teachers need to be with female students. However, according to various district policy, should there be two adults in the locker room, that kind of thing. So another possibility might to have parents sign a form that acknowledges students will be unattended in the locker room. It's kind of up to the district as to what they think is more safe. And then another option would be to reduce any risks, to maybe have half of the students change at one time and then the second half change after that. Some professional ethics, so make sure staff follow whichever proactive measures are decided upon, and just enforce those. The third court case is Barnett versus Caldwell. This took place recently at a high school in Georgia. Caldwell left her classroom unattended and asked another teacher to listen out for her class. Antoine Williams, one of her high school students, was engaging in horseplay with another student when Antoine fell to the ground with the other student on top of him. As a result, Antoine had a broken collarbone and lacerated a major blood vessel. And when EMT took Antoine to the hospital, he was pronounced dead. Interestingly, the teacher first said that she had never left the classroom, and then later said that she needed to use the restroom. District policy was looked into, and it says that students are never to be unsupervised. However, supervised and unsupervised were not defined in the handbook, and so the Supreme Court concluded that the duty to supervise students was not absolute or a definite duty for a teacher to be physically present in the classroom at all times, as the policy required a teacher to use personal deliberation and judgment on when to leave the classroom and how to establish supervision in her classroom during the absence. So some reactive measures, with the death of a student, that's obviously major. So I think it's important to provide mental health services for students, teachers, and or families. Some proactive measures, definitely develop a protocol. If a teacher needs to leave the room, this is an example, have them call the main office or other predetermined location to have someone take over supervision for the short amount of time. I think professionally, you definitely need to clarify supervision in the handbook, and then also clarify that to staff. So the fourth court case is Martinez versus New Haven, and this took place in Connecticut. A teacher was supervising between 70 to 75 students in an auditorium, and an 11-year-old boy was waiting in the auditorium for school to start when a girl chasing another student dropped a pair of safety scissors she had been holding in her hand. When the girl went to pick up the scissors, she accidentally cut the boy on the side of the face. The teacher had not seen the girl running because he was talking to other students at the time. The boy was taken to the hospital for treatment. The court found in favor of the boy's family on failure to supervise claim and the failure to properly inspect the premises, and it awarded over $50,000 in damages. However, it was not apparent that any harm was imminent. Therefore, there was no clear duty to act. So, some reactive measures. I think first, give appropriate consequences to the student running with scissors. She should not have been doing that. So perhaps, a timeout or a talking to or something. Definitely get statements from students and teacher who saw the instance, and call parents. Again, communication cannot be reiterated enough. Some proactive measures: remind all students not to run with scissors, regardless of their location. And I think professional ethics, it would be really a much safer route to have a better ratio of teachers to students, perhaps maybe 1 to 30 in the auditorium rather than 1 to 75. The final case that we're going to look at is Munn versus Hotchkiss School. So a 15-year-old Kara Munn was hiking on a forested mountain in China during a summer trip organized by her school, Hotchkiss. She was bitten by a tick that transmitted encephalitis. This caused serious neurological damage and left her permanently unable to speak. Kara and her parents sued Hotchkiss, arguing that the school was negligent under Connecticut law for failing to warn them that the trip might bring her into contact with disease-bearing insects, and in failing to take steps to ensure that Kara took proactive measures, such as using insect repellent, wearing proper clothing while hiking in forested areas, and checking for ticks. Ultimately, a jury found Hotchkiss negligent and awarded Kara and her parents $41.5 million in damages. So a reactive measure: support students, staff, and teachers with available resources. Again, I think this is a very traumatic event. And so just trying to help families and students the best as possible through this situation would be ideal. Proactive. I would, in this case, maybe consider hiring an outside company to run school trips in the future so that they would be liable rather than the school, if such a case presents itself again. In my opinion, I think there's so many what ifs that could go wrong, that you wouldn't be able to foresee. So having, excuse me, professionals that run these kind of trips all the time might be best. And as far as professional ethics, I would say reiterate to staff, don't hesitate to call on the school nurse or medical professionals if an emergency arises. I think it's better to be safe than sorry, and have support and protection for staff and students if the need arises. Thanks a lot.